Hey guys, in this episode, we go into a little bit of the historical understanding of the tense relationship between the island nation known as Taiwan to most of the world and mainland China or the People's Republic of China. So, why is there a problem? Is there a problem? Well, obviously there is. And are we sailing ships through the Strait of Taiwan? What's that all about? Why are people getting angry? Is this tied into the trade war? Well, take a listen and find out. Okay, guys, so let's talk a little bit about what goes on over in Taiwan and China. So, if you pay any attention to the news, you know that we are often sailing warships, we're often sailing military ships through the Strait of Taiwan, in between China and Taiwan. And many people might not understand what some of the hostility is. Why does it exist? What's the problem here? What's going on? So I'm just going to provide a little bit of background information. It's not going to be super in-depth. It's kind of like a rough primer, as some of this information I've learned a while ago, and some of it is I've been recently brushed up on, and some of it I'm learning as I go now. So basically, the thing with China and Taiwan, we can trace it back. Initially, the easiest way to track it is to go back to 1949, when Mao, as most people know him as Mao Zedong, well, I mean, that's his name, he led a communist revolution against the existing, what they call, I guess, nationalist government in China at the time. Now, before Mao led his communist revolution, in China, the government in the country was not that strong. They had been weakened by what the Chinese call the Century of Humiliation, which, if I'm correct, started in the mid-1800s, around the time of the Chinese and the British Opium Wars. And it was a way for the British to essentially gain economic influence in China. That's when they took over Hong Kong, or that's when they started getting into Hong Kong. The French got involved. You know, the United States eventually got a little piece of the pie without going in depth. And it was a time in China's history where they were beaten on the military and technological front. They didn't have any strong response. And from about the mid-1800s until 1949, which is the mid-1900s, obviously, mid-20th century, they were weak, not strongly organized, and were not able to militarily defend themselves against incursions from other countries, right? At first it was the West, but we all know, or some people may know, that Japan launched a massive offensive against China back in World War II and did a lot of damage. So China, up until Mao, from the mid-1800s, was weak and a mess. When Mao took over, he displaced the existing government. And the existing government went to Taiwan. Now, the existing government vowed to return to Taiwan. So what they wanted to do was go back to Taiwan, the existing government fled to Taiwan and vowed to go back to mainland China, where Mao was, and take over. And actually, they still had some occupation just off the coast of southeastern China for a while. So, and after that, the government of Taiwan claimed themselves the Republic of China and said that mainland China, which we all refer to as the People's Republic of China, was actually part of what we call Taiwan. Like that actually Taiwan is the real China, and the People's Republic of China, run by Mao, with all the people in it, was just temporarily overrun by Mao and the communists, but that they were going to come back and take the country back. So Taiwan claimed that they were the real China. They were going to take back the mainland. The mainland, inversely, had claimed that Taiwan was part of just a breakaway province. that they've historically been under Chinese influence, and that the disagreement between the island of Taiwan and China is such that it is actually the communist government's land, and they just haven't seized it yet, but they're going to. And let's go ahead and take a look back through history for a minute and see what was going on with that. So hold on for some ads. We'll be right back. Hey, everybody. Do you want to record your own podcast like me? Well, Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing your podcast. Best of all, it's 100% free and ridiculously easy to use. And now, Anchor can match you with great sponsors who want to advertise on your podcast. That means you get paid to podcast right away. In fact, that's what I'm doing right now by reading this ad. That's right, mofos. It's easy. Check it out. Okay, so in order to get a little better understanding of the situation, and this kind of will actually help with the issues with China and other islands, right? We currently hear, it's on the news, that China has frequent clashes and problems with its neighbors regarding land and islands around China in the South China Sea. So part of that stems from the fact that basically China is, this is what I've learned from reading mostly that book from Henry Kissinger on China, where he goes into a great primer of historical significance of China and talks about how basically historically China viewed the countries and the places around it as, tributaries of China, as kind of like vassal states, where they didn't just overtly engage in conquest, but they viewed themselves as superior intellectually, economically, everything. They just viewed themselves culturally superior to these other countries and kind of viewed the world around Chinese life and Chinese culture. And basically, from what I understand, China has always had some kind of presence. There's always been not always, but there's been a strong presence of Chinese people on the island of Taiwan. And as a result, China does believe that Taiwan is part of China. And Taiwan believes that they are the actual China themselves, like that they should be the government of Taiwan used to believe, I don't know what they believe now, that they were the legitimate rulers of China, the mainland, but they were just in exile until they could get it back. Whereas the mainland communists are invoking this more historical tradition of, no, Taiwan is part of China and we are the rulers of China, so therefore you're under us. So there's an interesting conflict going on here where each side believed that they owned the other. Taiwan believed that they owned the state that the communists ran. The communists believed that they owned the state that the nationalists ran in Taiwan. And so throughout the last century, through the mid-50s, there have been several potential conflicts and problems between China and Taiwan. And I think a lot of that has stemmed from that historical understanding, that historical tradition. So there's been a lot of tension, and China has basically wanted to get back Taiwan ever since Mao took over in the 50s, or, in 1949. He has always wanted to reunify, or what they call unify, Taiwan with mainland China. So this will help give you some perspective if you're trying to figure out why is it that, we keep hearing about Taiwan in the news, about, I keep hearing about ships sailing there and about how China has these plans drawn up to invade Taiwan. And a lot of people, if you don't know what's going on, you'll be like, well, why are they going to invade Taiwan? And it's basically, they believe, I don't know. I don't know how sincere it is. But historically, they do believe that Taiwan is part of China. That's kind of like a renegade province that they broke away from the mainland, they broke away from the main government, and China is trying to. The way I see the Chinese government now is they're in a growth phase, they're in an expansionary phase. I think that's obvious, right? And they want to consolidate as much area around them as possible. And it makes sense, right? I mean, they want to have a buffer. You want to have as much land between you and your enemies as possible. And so it makes sense that, you'd also want Taiwan if you can claim it. And so there is a lot of tension there that has existed for the last 60 or 70 years between the Chinese and what used to be called Formosa, which is known as Taiwan nowadays. And so there's a lot of tension there. So what is going on nowadays? Let's take a look at some things that are happening currently. So, for example, we've got this article from Reuters. I've read it in a couple other places too. That this is written from. It was written on June 6th, so yesterday. Actually, yeah, yesterday or today? Today, in fact. Okay. The United States is pursuing a sale of more than $2 billion in weapons to Taiwan, sources say, angering China. The United States is pursuing a sale of more than $2 billion worth of tanks and weapons to Taiwan. For people familiar with the negotiations said, sparking anger from Beijing, which is already involved in an escalating trade war with Washington. An informal notification of the proposed sale has been sent to the U.S. Congress, the four sources said, on the condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to speak about the possible deal. And it just talks about some of how they want to sell them tanks, ammunition, anti-aircraft stuff. The United States is the main arms supplier to Taiwan, which China deems its own and has never renounced the use of force to bring the self-ruled island under its control. So there's the key there. The United States is the main arms supplier to Taiwan, which China deems its own. So like I said, China believes that Taiwan is part of China. And historically, Taiwan believed that they were China and that China was theirs. So, like I said, I don't think that's the case now, but that's the case historically. And it seems like an intractable conflict. And then there's another article, if you're not paying attention, according to this article, which is from May 22nd, the U.S. had sailed two ships through the Taiwan Strait. And it said there was a really interesting. So the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Lu Kang said Beijing had launched stern representations with the United States. The Taiwan issue is the most sensitive in China-U.S. relations, he told the Daily News briefing in Beijing. Taiwan's defense ministry said the two ships had sailed north through the Taiwan Strait and they had monitored the mission. And they, reassured everything was normal. But essentially, Trump has been, or somebody, I guess Trump, whoever, has authorized ships to sail through the Taiwan Strait. What I read from that article was once a month since about at least this year. And we started doing it again back in July of last year. But I don't think it was once a month. So do I know why Trump is doing this or why they're doing it? No, I'm not sure. Could it be a negotiation strategy, right? Could it be... people, if anybody is educated on the topic of China and Taiwan, then it would be smart for them to understand that this is a major problem for the Chinese, that they want to have Taiwan under their control, and that it could be used possibly as leverage in a deal with China. Like, hey, we're not going to give up Taiwan, but we're not going to send warships through the area. It could be used as a way to save face, right? It could be used as a way to save face, like, okay, listen, we're not going to publicly try to humiliate you by sailing our ships in between you and Taiwan. Just leave Taiwan alone. I don't know. Who knows? But the arms deal upsets China a lot because, like I said, China believes Taiwan is theirs. And us sailing ships through there is also angering them a lot. So this is an ongoing issue. It's been going on for the last, almost 70 years, and it's probably not going to go away anytime soon. And it will be interesting to see where this goes. But like I said, I wanted to provide some historical context here that this conflict, this issue, it's not, while the rest of the world views it as between two different countries. The United States doesn't even have foreign or have official ties to Taiwan. We don't have an embassy in Taiwan because both Taiwan and the People's Republic of China say they are both China. And we recognize the mainland People's Republic of China as the official China. And since both countries since both places are saying they are the same entity, we can only acknowledge one under that situation. Or at least that's what I know. In fact, I probably need to do some more research at this topic. But this is a highly important situation for China. And so this all plays in to what's happening over there. But people should understand that this is a conflict that arose mainly out of the communist revolution in the 1940s, where the current the government at the time fled to Taiwan. Ever since then, they've both claimed to be the rulers of the same country, and ever since then, there's been a conflict. So hopefully you know a little bit more about the situation. Godspeed. That's all I got for today.